This is the Profit from Legal podcast. I'm your host, Noel Bagwell. Whether you've listened to the podcast from the first episode or you're tuning in for the first time, welcome. The Profit from Legal podcast is brought to you by Executive Legal Professionals, PLLC, also called Executive LP, an innovative virtual law firm based in Nashville, Tennessee. At Executive LP, we work with businesses to transform their legal support from a cost center to a profit engine. And that's what we talk about on this podcast. Our semi-monthly regular episodes and frequent interviews with interesting professionals bring our audience of savvy entrepreneurs and business decision makers useful insights for getting the most out of their legal support. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll be right back after this brief commercial message. Welcome back to another episode of the Profit from Legal podcast. My name is Noel Bagwell, and we've got another interview episode for you today. My guest is Lesley Samms, MSc, ANLP, MAC. Lesley has a background in finance and brand management. She's the founder and managing director of Pure Arts Group, world-renowned for professional artist support. She has a postgraduate master's degree in international event management and is a qualified neuro-linguistic programming coach. Lesley has been working in contemporary art for the last 20 years, and during that time, she has curated hundreds of exhibits, including at the Saatchi Gallery in London. She has also delivered thousands of hours of professional development, mentoring, and coaching for artists. Most recently, she has launched Pure Talks in conversation with creatives, visionaries, shift makers, and those that are making positive change in the world. Welcome to the Profit from Legal podcast, Lesley. It's a real privilege to have you on today.
Oh, thank you, Noel. I'm delighted to be here.
We had a really great conversation leading up to this interview. And in that conversation, you may recall I mentioned to you an article called The Old New York Won't Come Back by Peggy Noonan. I know we're all a bit sick of COVID. We have COVID fatigue and all of that. Nobody really wants to talk about it. But the conversation around bouncing back, I think, is an important one. And Ms. Noonan writes in her article about that, we're in a transformational time. Institutions will have to be nimble and farsighted now, or they won't survive. They're going to have to be creative and generous and leave old intransigencies behind. To lead in times like this will require the eyes of an artist who sees the broad shape of things, not an analyst who sees data points. With your background on this, I'm really excited to have you as a guest to talk about this quote. Can you speak to this a bit from your experience and in the context of what you're doing now?
Absolutely. That's a complex statement. And I think that it may have even shifted further on since Peggy actually wrote that article, because we really are at a time of complete paradigm shift. And I'm seeing it literally moving before my eyes daily with the discussion of NFTs for digital art and the discussion I'm hearing comments from gallerists about how they are going to have to shift their business models, and from event managers who are having to shift their business models, that I think the transformation is literally happening before our eyes. And that's really exciting. It's really exciting to be in the art world, in the world, but in the art world particularly, because the art world, I think, is something that has been intransigent up until now. And first of all, I thought I'd just talk a little bit about that first bit of what she says about the eyes of the artist, because I'm not absolutely 100% behind her on that one. Because what is the eyes of the artist? What does she mean, the eyes of the artist? You know, we all have a creative part of our brain. It's just whether we choose to use it or not, I think.
I agree with that. I think maybe she's talking a little bit about being willing to color outside the lines, as it were, or to make your own rules. Don't we associate that a bit more with artists than analysts? And I think that's the distinction she's making, and probably using a bit of hyperbole to drive home her point.
I'm not sure I agree even with that, because I have a background in data. I love data. I think data can be actually quite colourful and quite creative. What I think she's alluding to, if I'm honest, is the creative brain and how you can tap into your creative brain if you choose to. And that's kind of based on our tendencies, and we all have different tendencies. And you could be someone like me who was in banking, but I had incredibly creative tendencies I came to the party with. So it is about tapping into the creative part of your brain. You know, the brain is a muscle. We all have equal parts. It's just the bits that we choose to use. And some people don't choose to use the creative part. They choose to sit in the logic part of their brain a lot more of the time. That can be quite stifling for some, but it can be quite liberating for others. I like logic, but I also don't actually recognize a box. I'm highly innovative, so I never see life as being within a box. I always think, where's the opportunity to be excited and creative? And yet I would be termed as someone who's quite logical, who approaches life quite logically. So as I say, I think instead of saying, look at it through the eyes of the artist, actually, I would say, start employing the creative side of your brain a bit more. You don't have to turn off the logic bit, the other side of your brain, but actually you just have to access the bit that you're just the muscle that you're not using very much at the moment. As humans, we're blessed with this amazing thing called imagination. You know, I can't think of anyone else, and I don't think monkeys have it or elephants. I think it is just us humans who are blessed with the power of the imagination. And the thing that she does say is that we can choose to foster. I think what she's saying is we can choose to foster that side of the brain. And if we don't, we're resisting change.
Yeah. And that's really the big point, right? That change is perhaps the only constant in the universe. Mm-hmm. And if we accept change, right. You know, death and taxes and the fact that things are going to change. Right. So I definitely agree with that. And I love what you're saying about making that distinction between creativity and logic. And even though there is a distinction there, they're both complementary in a sense. And we don't have to favor one to the exclusion of the other. Well, when it comes to leading in business as a creative professional, what is the biggest mistake that you see creative entrepreneurs making?
Now, I thought about this, and I don't think it's a mistake. Again, it's like, look at me, I'm quite controversial. Sorry, I'm not a yes. I'm not a yes girl.
Trouble with that. No, I've had other guests who've really pushed back when I ask that question about mistakes, and I usually do. They say, "Oh, that seems a bit harsh." What about challenges? You know, they like that. So maybe reframe the question as what's the biggest challenge for creative entrepreneurs?
Yeah. And again, I don't think it's not about challenges either. I think it's about how we react to the social norms, the experiences that we have in life, all the things that make us who we are, all those systems, socialization, etc., that make us who we are. Put us out into the world with an attitude and a mindset. And I think it's the mindset is all, if I'm honest with you. And the thing that I have to address with everybody that I work with personally, always in the first instance, is about mindset. It's about reframing how you think and how you present to the world and how you allow the world to present to you. And yes, we come, as I said earlier, you know, I'm a firm believer in we come to the world with something. We come with a set of tendencies, but they don't have to define us. And also we have all these experiences, you know, when we're growing up and with our parents, but they don't have to define us. We can actually decide to step aside from those. And that comes from being optimistic and open to growing. I had a conversation with a client yesterday and we were talking about growing. And I said, you're going to have to grow or you're going to have to go. Got two choices, grow or go, because
Absolutely,
if you don't grow, then you're stuck. You're stuck where you are. So I think it's not about a mistake. I think it's about being open to growing. And if they're not open to growing, they don't have the attitude that will allow them to spot the magic when it happens. And that's the thing, isn't it? Spotting the magic when it happens.
Yeah, I've held for a while now an opinion that luck is a skill. And in talking about spotting the magic when it happens, as some people might frame that as, oh, that so-and-so just got lucky. But I think luck is a skill, and it's cultivating the intersection of opportunity and preparation. And to be prepared to see an opportunity when it presents itself requires us to have a nimble brain, to be flexible, and to not be too set in our ways or attached to a certain perspective. For me, that's the essence of creativity. It's how many uses can you find for a paperclip? I've heard it asked. And I think it's Sir Ken Robinson who has that great talk on changing education paradigms, in which he talks about how young school children are so much more creative than people who've been, quote unquote, educated. And they can come up with a million different ways to use a paperclip. But the more we educate ourselves, if we must use that term, I think it's completely used incorrectly. But the more we educate ourselves these days, the more rigid our thinking tends to become if we go through the sort of traditional education system.
I think you just hit the nail on the head there. It's about traditional education system.
Yeah, it makes us limited.
Yeah, I would say that it instills in us some quite hardwired limiting beliefs. And
yes.
From my experience of working with creatives, as I say, my background is pure business, and I went through a conventional education system and ended up working in banking, and then moved across into marketing. And it wasn't until I started to become aware of myself, which was probably in my, mid to late 20s, that I started to grow and actually get the education in life that I needed in order to unlock my own personal potential. I had unlocked a pathway by going through the conventional, you do your education at school and at college, etc. And I'd unlocked a pathway for sure. But what I hadn't unlocked was my actual unlimited potential that was inside of myself, because I'd been confined by that traditional education system. So going into life and suddenly being exposed to other conversations and hearing different perspectives. I worked at Coca-Cola, so I was exposed to conversations of people from America and quite a wide, diverse range of conversations of people's experiences from all over the UK as well. And I started to understand a little bit more about life. And that's when I realized that you could have aspirations outside of the convention that you had been fed as you were growing up, and you could actually set quite aspirational goals for yourself. And literally, if you wanted to play big, play big. Don't play small. And that's when I decided, to much chagrin by the powers that be, that I was going to leave Coca-Cola, and I was going to go back to do some creative education. I went back and did a photography diploma in the first instance, and they were absolutely horrified. They were like, you're doing so well and we rely on you, and you're set for stardom. And I was like, yep, stardom in your world, in the world that you see, the pathways that you see. But I've had a glimpse of something else. I got a glimpse of something else by these experiences and knowledge. And I leveraged that. Leveraged that growth opportunity to see a different way for me, to make a different path.
Was this around the time that you started pursuing certification in neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP?
No, actually. So that came later. And again, that is the journey, isn't it? So I left there, and I realized that I'm a high innovator. So I get bored easily. I get bored very quickly. And I was getting bored. I was good at what I did, but I was getting bored with it. So, I realized that there were other things to do. So I went off and I set up my own business doing photography. And then I had a couple of kids, and I opened an art gallery. And I really enjoyed having the chats with the artists when they came into the gallery, not particularly about art, but about how to help them make a business, actually make money out of making their art. And I realized that the art world was so, it wasn't being, there was a lot of, I don't want to say dishonesty, but there was a lot of people who were making a lot of money in the business, and there were a lot of people who were being exploited as a means to those other people making money. And for me, this was really apparent when I was sat in the gallery. I was like, hang on a minute. What is this? What is this system all about? And why are these people, not thriving? They're essential to the process. You've got to have the artists. Otherwise, the gallerists don't exist, and you haven't got art to enjoy, and the museums won't be there. So I really got into the nitty gritty of understanding how the market worked myself, and then giving that information on to the artists. So to empower them to make choices themselves. And that's what I found I really loved. I really loved that aspect of it.
So you were really doing a bit of vocational guidance, as it were, for artists at that point. And that really puts me in mind of a bit of a talk that Alan Watts gave years ago. And he said, let's suppose, and I do this often in vocational guidance of students, they come to me and say, well, we're getting out of college and we haven't the faintest idea of what we want to do. And so I always ask the question, well, what would you like to do if money were no object? How would you really enjoy spending your time? How are you spending your life? Well, it's so amazing. As a result of our kind of educational system, crowds of students say, well, we'd like to be painters. We'd like to be poets. We'd like to be writers. But as everybody knows, you can't earn any money that way. Or another person says, well, I'd like to live an out of doors life and ride horses. And I'd say, well, do you want to teach in a riding school? Let's go through with it. What do you want to do? And when we finally have got down to something which the individual says he really wants to do, I will say to him, you do that and forget the money. Because if you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you'll spend your life completely wasting your time. You'll be doing things that you don't like doing in order to go on living. That is, to go on doing things you don't like doing, which is stupid. Better to have a short life that's full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way. And after all, if you do really like what you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is, you can eventually become a master of it. It's the only way to become a master of something, to be really with it. And then you'll be able to get a good fee for whatever it is. So don't worry too much. Somebody is interested in everything, and anything you can be interested in, you'll find others who will. But it's absolutely stupid to spend your time doing things you don't like in order to go on spending things you don't like, spending time doing things you don't like, and to teach your children to follow in the same track. See, what we're doing is we're bringing up children and educating them to live the same sort of lives we're living, in order that they may justify themselves and find satisfaction in life by bringing up their children to bring up their children to do the same thing. So it's all retch and no vomit. It never gets there. And so therefore, it's important to consider this question: what do I desire? And that's the question I asked them. That was what I sat there and asked them. If I take everything out of the way, what's your dream? Right. And I do the same thing in my career, in my profession as well. Like with Profit from Legal, it's all about finding a path to profitability and using legal services to make your business more profitable. But everything we do at Executive LP starts with that question: what do you desire? What do you want to do? What kind of life do you want to live? How can we align your business in that direction, in line with that goal? And then how can we align legal services with your enterprise goals? And I take it that you do the same thing from a vocational guidance perspective. Absolutely. For artists.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. I help them step aside all of those limiting moments and beliefs and conventions. I give them the information that they need and the tools they need. And often what they say, and I don't know whether you hear this as well, Noel, is often what they say to me is, it was so amazing, you gave me the permission. And I was like, I'm not giving you permission. You don't need my permission. But because of the world order that we live in, they almost do. And the minute you give people the permission to fly, they start flying. And it's the most wonderful thing to watch. I can't.
Yeah, I tell people I just created the conditions necessary for you to give yourself permission.
Exactly.
I don't have any magic, except I can help rearrange your nest, right? Customize your environment or the environment in which you make decisions. And then when you're aware of all the incentives at play and you realize that all the things that you were so afraid of are really not legitimate sources of fear, you sort of get out of your own way naturally.
Exactly.
It's just, yeah.
Exactly. It's get out of your own way. And it's also that thing about notice what you notice. Don't walk around blinkered, but actually be conscious of what you're observing and seeing, because we walk around in a bubble, don't we? We walk around in our own bubble, amplifying and attracting. That's the law of attraction. We attract more of what we are giving our focus of our attention to us. Mm-hmm. And I think another quote, I think, is the route to madness is to carry on doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. Mm. You have to change something in there, whether it's your thoughts, your feelings, or your behavior. You've got to change something. If you want to change, you have to change one of those. And as I say, from my experience of working with creatives, going back to Peggy's thing about use the eyes of the creatives, and that will lead us out of this. I'm afraid a lot of the eyes of the creatives have been so masked. They've got heavy glasses on these days because of the conventions that have been imposed on them, and they come out of art school with imposter syndrome and victim syndrome. And as you were just describing about being told you can't make money doing that, but of course you can. You can make money doing anything that you want, as long as you're not going to be, your mindset is not going to be trapped in a negative, can't do, lack mindset. If you have a positive, optimistic outlook on life, which I do, I always expect the best to happen, and I always trust that what I need will come along and it will sort itself out. I, from experience now, know that consistency, turning up, showing up and taking action is the answer. You can't sit around being passive if you want something in life.
My friend Mike Reed, who's with Dent Global, he's the director of Dent Global's North American Key Person of Influence Business Accelerator, calls this a with or without you attitude. We're doing this wonderful thing over here. This is going to be great. Our clients are going to love it. Our audience is going to love it. We're going to make this happen. And we're doing it with or without you. But we would love to have you along if you'd like to be part of it. I think you'll get a lot out of it. I think your customers or vendors or suppliers will get a lot out of it. And I love that with or without you attitude. And for me, it's not sort of, well, I'm doing this with or without you. I mean, it's everything is different in the tone, right? It's we're doing this whether or not you're involved, but we'd love to have you along. And, you can take that approach with people that you're selling to, people that you want to partner with. It's just a great attitude to have in business. What do you think? I mean, we've talked about leading with the eyes of the artist or the eyes of the creative. We've talked about so many things already, but I still have a few more questions still yet to cover with you if you have the time.
Keep going.
I really want to know.
I'm really enjoying unpacking that question.
Yeah. No, it's. I think it's a big one, and even though we sort of go back and forth over, mistakes and challenges, or whether it's something else entirely, I think the challenge there is what's holding people back. Yeah. What's holding the creative entrepreneur back. Yeah. And so now that we've talked about that a bit, what do you think is, if you had to distill it down to one thing, and I know we've also talked about mindset and how being receptive to change and changing mindset is probably the core of getting out of that, as an alternative. So we've talked about that too. But if you had to distill it down to doing one thing, like an action that you could take to move the needle, as it were, towards a better mindset, what do you think that would be?
Clarity.
Clarity is as a verb. So
Clarity.
does that manifest as meditation then, or some other thing, mindfulness generally, or what do you think?
All the practices around getting some clarity into your brain of, so yes, meditation, regular routine, having a routine, a daily routine, not just expecting everything, expect hope. I think hope is a worry because you're leaving it in the hands of outside forces, whereas I prefer to have clarity of intention, clarity of action, clarity of thought, and be very conscious about what I'm doing. And that, I think the word clarity is what I would say is the game changer there. Yes, it covers all, it comes down to time management. I have clarity of time management. So when I'm booking my week out, I make sure that I time block so that I can be as optimized in what I do as I want. So therefore, then I don't have a jumbled up brain. It can have clarity because it's not trying to flip and between many tasks, which we as humans cannot do. We can only do one thing at a time. And if we try and do two things, we do them both badly.
Agreed.
And often make mistakes. So I have clarity, disciplined clarity of function and function as a human.
Oh, you're a bit sneaky throwing other things in there. Now you snuck in discipline and clarity, and I'm expecting intentionality next to be intentional about things.
Conscious.
All of these things.
But that is truth. That's the truth. That is what I do.
There's not just one path out of it. It comes along with all these other ancillary and supplemental and enhancing traits that are part of developing good entrepreneurial character. I think being successful as an entrepreneur comes down to character, and it comes down to developing these traits like having the right mindset, the mindset of an entrepreneur, being disciplined, as you say, having clarity, as you say, being intentional about how you structure your relationships and your schedule and all of those things. Really what we're describing here is the character of an individual, and we're also implicitly condemning a conventional education system that neglects to develop that in people on a large scale. And especially, and the people who I think are harmed the most by that are the people who have the strongest creative tendencies, because it's sit down, shut up, and regurgitate what I tell you. That's what the education system does. It's about repetition and memorization. And we do a lot of things in the United States. I'm sure it's similar in the UK, just completely out of order. We've gotten away even from the trivium model, where that sort of approach might be effective to a certain degree in some disciplines. Now we're asking third graders to write a book report, which is madness. They haven't really earned the right to render an opinion because they haven't been taught critical thinking skills or how to digest a book or anything like that. And so it really has just become a complete mess. And I think we need to, if we want to get sanity and we want to, as entrepreneurs and people who support entrepreneurs and business people in business decision makers, if we want to help them to educate themselves, which is where I think we learn all our most valuable lessons, and learn to be leaders, I think we really have to teach entrepreneurial character. Does that resonate at all with you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I've learned the biggest lessons in life while I've just been getting on with life and meeting other people and not being scared, worrying about failing, because I think what they engender out of you in the conventional school system is that failure. You're not to fail. You're all going to be graded, and if you someone who's prepared to try, then you're likely to hit C's and D's every now and again because you're trying things. It's the power of it's the Carol Dweck power of I can't do it yet, but give me enough time and I'll get there. I went through a good 20 years of my early life thinking I was an idiot, thinking I was not intelligent because the conventional school system didn't work for me. I was too confrontational. I asked too many questions.
What's that like? I wish I could relate to that.
I was always the one with my hand up going, but miss, that doesn't make sense. And I'm sorry. and then they could never answer me. And they would always be, could you just go and sit over there and be quiet and recite and copy out this text, 15 times. And I also worked out that I have a photographic memory, which is not good for a teacher. So I would just memorize stuff the day before and then go and sit the exam and get an A. And they'd be like, that's just, she didn't turn up. And, it was really annoying for them. And I know my husband, who's sitting over here in the office with me, he would try and tell me jokes early in our relationship. He's got over this now. Early in our relationship, he would try and tell me jokes. And I said, but hang on a minute, that's not possible. He said, Lesley, it's a joke. I'm like, no, sorry, that's not how my brain works. I unpick everything and I'm a sponge and I'm always, I'll go, I don't see a box. I'm always highly, looking for, well, if that's where we are, where could we be? If we did this could be amazing. And the conventional school system does not like people like that. It really doesn't.
No, I can relate to that because it didn't like me either, and for very similar reasons. I joke saying I wish I could relate to that because I relate to it incredibly strongly. That's just spot on. Well, my next question was, can you share a story that illustrates your point? But I think you've done that. All of this really puts me in mind too of that great philosopher John Lennon, who said, "Life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans."
Exactly.
And you do just have to get on with it, right? And do the best you can, develop your character along the way, get some clarity, get a mentor to help you gain that clarity. Because I think, it's not just about the inner journey, it's also the outer journey and knowing yourself in relation to others and developing strong social skills and that sort of thing. So my final question for you, because we're a bit over time, and that's quite all right because we've used our time wisely. So I'm content to color outside the lines and ignore the clock. And my final question is, what do you recommend most that creative professionals do to change in directionally correct ways? Now, this is different from, I want to make a quick distinction from my previous question, because I asked for sort of the one thing, the one practice, as it were. But if you're stuck as a creative professional and you want to bust through the block in your way, what do you think they should do? What would be a directionally correct step?
Listen more than you speak. Listen, and you hear things. I mean, especially meditate and listen. Listen to your own thoughts, and then listen to others, because all the time you're listening, you're learning something, and that's what I would say is listen. Don't be afraid to try stuff. Life's about trying stuff. Go out and try it. Doesn't matter if, you can't make a fool of yourself unless you allow yourself to feel like you're a fool. That's a mindset again, isn't it? It's like oppression. It's like everything. You can only be oppressed if your mindset allows you to be oppressed. If it doesn't, then, no one can do that to you. You're in charge of yourself. And listen to others, learn. It always puts me in mind of Picasso. I think he would have been my exemplar that I would use for creatives when talking about.
It's hard to listen with only one ear, though, isn't it? I mean,
that's not Picasso. That's Van Gogh.
No, you're right. That's Van Gogh. Yeah, you're right. I had a bit of a brain fart there. Well, I made a clever joke, but there you are pointing out.
You made a clever joke.
It would have been clever, but that I stupidly got the wrong artist. But yeah, you're right. Picasso, Van Gogh.
Picasso died the richest artist of all time. And he would have been known as a super influencer now because he learned how to leverage other people's knowledge. And that's the thing. Listen and leverage. Listen and leverage. And that's what I've done. I've modeled on other people. So I've watched other people and I've gone, oh, you're doing that really well. I'll model that behavior now for a bit. Then I'll model it and I'll take the best bits I want. And then I'll go on and I'll say, right, now I've grown a bit more. Now the next thing, and that's how I got to NLP, which is a question you asked me quite a long time ago. How did I get into NLP? And that was from doing my master's and doing my thesis and coming across this as part of the interviews that I did. And someone said to me about NLP, and I was like, what's that? So I went and I sat in on some free sessions, and I find it amazing because it opens the opportunity to model your behavior even on people that you don't personally know. Anyone can be a mentor to you. You don't actually have to have direct contact with them. I can be a mentor for people if they want to listen to all the free broadcasting that I do and the conversations that I have with people. They don't actually have to come and have a one-to-one session with me. Although if they've got a particular issue, that is obviously a good idea.
Right. I was going to say, don't talk yourself out of a job.
No. To be quite honest, there aren't enough hours in the day. And as an entrepreneur, you're always looking at your models and scaling. Actually doing things in a group scenario is a really good way, because you don't then just learn from me, but you learn from others who are interacting with me as well. So no, listen and leverage is my advice.
Every time that I've been in a group setting as an adult professional, I hated group projects in school as a kid, but mostly because I felt like I would do the heavy lifting while other students sat back and got a good grade as a result. But now as an adult, and with everybody feeling a bit more mature and feeling like they need to contribute and having accountability and that sort of thing, I get a lot out of working together with people in a group. And I always feel like, even though a person in my group might not be the one directing all the action in the exercise, as it were, that may come from a mentor or someone outside the group or the program we're a part of, whatever. I learn a lot from just listening to the other people in my group. And I see them as mentors in their area of specialty. I listen to them. And for entrepreneurs, I think this is super important, because we talk about the BAIL team, or at least the SBA in the United States talks a lot about what they call the BAIL team. And the BAIL is an acronym, BAIL. It's banking, accounting, insurance, and legal. Now, it is egregious that they've left marketing and sales off the list there. I think that those are just as necessary for support. I think they probably assume that you've got marketing and sales in-house, but for most entrepreneurs getting started, at least, that's not the case. You need to work with independent contractors a lot. But having that support network around you and seeing each one of those support professionals, whether it's in finance or accounting or legal or insurance, marketing, sales, whatever it may be, as a mentor in that discipline, but then also recognizing that they're a service provider that's there to deliver a result for you and you don't have to do it yourself, is a crucial thing and when I see that click for my clients, thereafter, after that click happens, I almost always see an explosion of productivity and revenue growth, and just kind of a sigh of relief, really. Their life just gets less stressful because they know how to handle the advice input, and then also how to direct the people providing them services to higher and better ends. It's a lot of really what we do with Profit from Legal, at least in the legal context. Legal profit from legal is legal operations. It's a legal operations function for your business installed into your business. And so what we're really doing there is showing entrepreneurs how to use legal counsel. Do you do with your clients in the vocational guidance of creative entrepreneurs? Do you do any of that, like showing them how to get the most out of a creative mentor or a marketing mentor or a sales mentor or anything like that?
Absolutely. And what we do is, we have workshops, courses, programs, memberships, people can access it on any level that they want. So, from the very outset is, we do the free broadcasts and interview artists. And as part of that process, there's a lot of advice comes out on how to price your artwork, manage your mindset, all of these aspects. But as you get more into the nitty gritty of it, and you're starting to grow your career, as you just said about outsourcing, really is what you're alluding to, outsourcing all of these things. Again, we model for the creatives exactly how a business should be run. So we lead by example. And our business exploded the minute I started outsourcing the things that I was really not, I could do them, but I just didn't want to do them. I don't want to do social media. I don't want to do design and manage a website. It's not things I want to do. I want to play to my skills and invest into the business the best of what I do, which is the knowledge that I've accrued, and the experience that I've accrued. So we model and we role model, and then we share that. And through our programs and our activities that people can obviously sign up for, we also model that through the activities that we get them. And the biggest shifts happen with the biggest resistance, I find. So the people that come to me and they say, I don't think this is for me. I don't think you were talking to me when you set this activity up. And I said, well, if you don't think so, then it was definitely for you. And then afterwards, when they've done it, they said, oh, I made the biggest shift when I did that, because we know our brain gives us the biggest pushback when we're about to step out of our comfort zone into our discomfort zone. So my advice to people listening is, if you start to feel uncomfortable, sit with it, dwell with it, understand why you feel uncomfortable, because that's likely to be the moment you're going to make the biggest shift. And leverage other people's talent. Why do things that make you miserable when other people are out there trained and happy to do it? I see it as my ethical duty to pay other people, because that is obviously helping the economy.
Well, it's sort of the corollary to what Alan Watts was saying, too. I love to kind of call back to that. He said, do for a living what you love, and forget about the money at first. Instead, just pursue your passion, become a master of it. Then you'll be able to command a high fee. But you're doing that to the exclusion of everything else, including all the things that are tedious and make you miserable. And so those things still have to get done, but you're not the one doing them. Ipso facto, someone else is doing them, and they're doing them for you. And so outsourcing is really baked into the cake of becoming a master of things and commanding a high fee because you're a master of those things, and following your passions. Outsourcing is necessary, and teamwork is necessary. Entrepreneurship is a team sport, and I think we're all better off whenever we have all-stars on our team. So I hope our listeners will reach out to you, and you'll be one of the all-stars on their team, at least for some of them. So to that end, please tell us how my audience can connect with you and how they can get the most out of that initial interaction.
So we're not for everyone, I would say. So it is about horses for courses. You have to find the right people for you. We work with creatives who are action orientated. So we want people who want to come and grow their career and really unlock their potential. And I work with anyone from 16 to 80 odd. And I have clients across that spectrum. So we don't mind whether you're new to creative entrepreneurial business, or whether you're coming to it later in life because it's your passion and you've put it on hold. So yes, my first comment would be, make sure we're the right people for you. And that is about being someone who's action orientated. If you are, the first thing to do is to go to the Pure Arts Group website, pureartsgroup.co.uk, and have a look at some of the videos and the broadcasts that we do, and listen to some of our podcasts. And again, if you think what we talk, the methods that we say to people, how they're going to grow their careers and be successful, rings true with you and resonates with you, then take the next step and become a member. And you just have to click the join button on the website, and that will take you through to the membership area. And there's loads of free resources. And from there on, everything unlocks. Instagram, Pure Arts Group, Facebook, Pure Arts Group. You're getting the vibe here. It's just Pure Arts Group. Put in Pure Arts Group into your Google bar and you'll find us. My name is Lesley Samms. If you DM us on Instagram, say you've heard me talking, and one of my team will then forward the message on to me. So yeah, Pure Arts Group all the way, and then you'll find us.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for all of the wonderful pearls of wisdom that you've shared with our audience, and just for your time today as well, for being a part of what we're doing on the Profit from Legal podcast. It's just been a real joy and pleasure to have you on. And I just want to say again, I really enjoyed our conversation leading up to the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you, Noel. I've really enjoyed it too. Maybe we'll do another one.
That would be great. Well, that's all for this episode of the Profit from Legal podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. Share it with your friends. Get the word out there that we're doing something free and useful for entrepreneurs who need legal support and don't quite know how to get the best use out of it or how to get the most out of it. We'll see you in the next episode of Profit from Legal. And until then, don't forget to think ahead, engage, and work to win.